Ready.
Hey Rory, how are we doing?
I'm good, David. How are you?
I'm very well, mate. Very, very well
It's
indeed. Good to see you again.
good to see you. It's been a while since we had the chance to get together with everything else that's going on in the world, but it's good that we managed it. It's good that we tested everything and got our work schedules organized so we can actually talk about this and put it under the security and unedited
It
YouTube
is, it
channel.
is, it is, mate. And you know what? I think it is about time. And yeah, I'm glad we got ourselves sorted. And hopefully we can give maybe an alternative view or the same view, I don't know, around cybersecurity threats and what we think is number one in the market and
Mm,
just give our views to the folks out there that want to listen and
yeah,
um and see where we get to with not solving the world, not solving the world's problems, but try and give an alternative view on what we see and what we have in our kit bag really to help out and see if that resonates with people. But more so just to run through some of those latest threats really and make sure people are aware of what's going on.
yeah, and I think that seeing this video, the second video in the channel will be basically around the current threats or the foreseeable threats, followed by number two section, which is more around cloud security that leads on from those threats because of the increased use of cloud. And that's the premise. So if we kick off with what are the latest trends, really, if that's what you were going to
Yeah.
start with, I think.
I think so, and we're not going to cover all of them because I think depending who you are and where you are, you'd list them differently. But I think let's say from our perspective, we would say, and what we've seen in the market, we'd probably say ransomware is still one of the top cybersecurity threats at the moment. We have to talk about generative AI, if I could even say it. Gen AI is probably easier way to say it.
It's much easier, much easier.
Yeah, let's do it with Gen AI. Don't edit that out.
I
Um,
won't, I won't.
exactly. And I think that's important because AI, as great as it is, as untested as it is going to play such a massive role in everybody's lives, whether you're applying for a job to knowing how something works or even getting it to do certain tasks that you don't want to be doing and bringing some automation. I think that's a key word. Automation is going to be more prevalent than ever in organizations and new tools that they take on board. So I think that would be pretty
Yeah,
cool. And with that, we talk about cloud, right? We talk about people's adoption of cloud and how that's increased year on year exponentially. But that brings with it the things like Internet of Things now. I remember when that used to be kind of a distant thing off when we were talking about
yeah.
big data. So back to the big data world, IoT was coming, always coming along. That I think it's fair to say we're probably in IoT now. And what does that mean? And then we can look at what types of ransomware really. I think we'll probably have a little chat around phishing because it just seems to be everywhere. Spear phishing everywhere. Look, small organizations, startups. I've done a few startups now, and they seem to be getting really targeted with this. And it's amazing how you start a business up and straight away people are trying to launch some type of ransomware attack on a business. And I think that's quite scary that they get that information, get your details very quickly, and know who you are in an organization. They can try and emulate who you are. So, how does that sound for a starter? If we talk about a few,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely makes sense.
cool.
Um, I
So,
think also the kind of ransomware as a service
mhm,
RAS is taking place
yeah,
and it's ramping up. But I think you had some figures that we spoke of earlier that kind of put all of this in perspective as well.
yeah, definitely. I think these can be argued, but I don't think you're going to be too far away. I think people would say estimated cost per cyber threat worldwide in 2025 is looking at something like $17 trillion and due to grow to, $24 trillion in 2027, so in the next couple of years, which is crazy,
Mm,
right? So that
mm,
shows you if you put that in business terms, there's a market there, right? There's a market for people to cause cybersecurity harm to organizations because it's worth a lot of money. And you could run people will run a very successful, if you call it a successful campaign to take money off organizations. And this
Yeah.
has to be treated as a massive threat to organizations, right? And where money's going to go and how it can slip out. I mean, if you look at, I know this wasn't a cyber attack, but if you in the news this morning, you had was it Citibank, or yeah, it was Citibank, yeah, and they reportedly nearly missed, well, they did mistransfer somebody something like, was it 26, or somebody will correct me anyway, something stupid like 26 billion or trillion into their account, and it's supposed to have been $260. And that transaction actually happened. They're what, the third or fourth biggest bank. They're not even the biggest bank. That's more than the US debt. How do they have that much money, number one, to transfer that anyway is a different conversation, right? But the fact that that even happened, that's not even a cybersecurity threat. But I just think if you took it into perspective, say somebody actually did do ransomware or spear phishing on that and got somebody to transfer that money. They only made the change in 90 hours to get that money back. In 90 hours, if that was an organization, that would have been gone, a criminal organization.
Yeah. They don't. I mean, the whole idea. A lot of this, there's a complexity in this as well. That everybody assumes that they're being ransomed and that's it. It's not. The ransom is used as a front
Mhm.
for them to get access to, let's say, sensitive information.
Yeah,
Um, and everybody in the ransom center realizes that. So it's not only a kind of existential threat to a business, especially SMEs, as you mentioned. It's also the fact that it, why are we being ransomed for so little? Okay, my business is worth X, and they're taking a fraction of that as a ransom, but it's really small. That's when you got to think, what have they got hold of? What do they really want to get access to? That's
yeah,
worth far more than just our business. So it's the end client or the end client is the one that they're going after. You're just a conduit. So the ransomware is you're making money on the way in and you're making money on the way out. So
yeah,
it's just exponentially exploding. Why would you, if you could do this as a criminal activity, why would you be stopped? Because you want to be in and out, and you want to make sure that nobody could see you, and that's their MO. It's how they're operating.
yeah. And
And
I think,
the only way they can be doing it is they see the attack vectors,
yeah,
so they'll
yeah.
utilize all of them. You know.
And that's a good point. That's a good point. We've got that on the diagram there, and we'll go through in some more of that detail in a minute. But I think, these aren't one-off things. I've worked in a number of startups and seen it a few times where I literally get an email from, say, another director or somebody posing to be in a certain role saying it's such and such's birthday coming up. Um, even trying to emulate HR to say, it's one of the directors' birthdays coming up, which might be true. So they do get some detail. We're putting together a surprise package. Do you want to stick 50 quid in, 100 quid in? That is a classic red flag, right? And anybody in any organization should be reporting that straight away as a security risk. They should not reply to the email. They should, not do anything with it. Just get rid of it, report it to security so it can be logged, and that's hugely important. And I know this is like 101. It's like teaching people to suck eggs, but people don't always follow those protocols. And we've got to look at, okay, how do we mitigate that risk? That's one thing. The next would be, we didn't mention it before, zero trust or less than zero trust. So any device you're getting any type of connection on into your network, how do we limit the risk of anything coming through that as well? Because you get this on your mobile phone. This happens when you're having tea, as I say 6:30, and you're going to come back to work again. Let's face it, everybody does a bit of work in the evening, right? You're going to jump back on the laptop and do another hour or something, and you'll answer something on your phone when you're most distracted. They send these things through knowing the time of day, roughly you're probably going to be having your tea. This is really important stuff. What's your view around that, Roy?
I think that I think there's a, if you like, there's a convergence of activities that are coming to a peak. One is the opportunities are there, the attack vectors. And you've also got the fact that governments and regulators are putting the onus on the business owners to be responsible. So you've got NIS2, you've got DORA coming in finance.
Yeah.
That is putting huge pressure on not just small businesses, but all businesses. Any corporate entity that is not adhering to certain regulations, and therefore there you have to start spending money. There has to be a money spent on this to protect yourselves. And it's a bit like the wind goes into, wherever the wind is going, everybody's following that wind. And I think with the zero trust, a lot of that was the principles of this make fantastic sense, brilliant sense. Why would you trust anybody? The application of that in the past has been, let's say, not satisfactory
Yeah.
because it's always been placed onto, let's say, a level 3, level 4, a hardware piece, not naming any names, but certain systems you'll get when it's got zero trust, you're getting hardware. You're still inherently being able, if you haven't got the right security around that hardware, you can get them. If you haven't got the right security, and this goes to your last point, I think around supply chains, IoT supply chain, is that
Mm-hmm.
it's not so much now about whether you've got somebody sending you an email or a rich text message, WhatsApp, you click in a link, then your phone is compromised. Or if you're using a laptop and you click the link, suddenly you have no idea if you've been compromised. You're using an application that you don't trust and in a certain way. That too could also, unbeknownst to them, be a back wall.
Yeah.
That somebody's climbed over and is using that application into your devices. So all of these are coming into play, and I think one of the areas also worth mentioning around this is APIs. So not just Gen AI, the fact that you've got that, I mean, it's going to happen. But AI is, I'd say AI is another conversation because yes, you've got AI threats, but you now have proactive AI in
Yeah.
detect and response systems. So you can kind of mitigate AI with AI and you start it kind of cancels itself out. That being said, I think I talked about this earlier, with the API area, NVIDIA last year publicized the fact that they had a part of the SDK kit for Gen AI was compromised and they fixed it. What that meant, I mean, they did it at the right time, admittedly, and they showed integrity by saying, "Look, it was we know about this," and that they did the right thing. In my view, they did the right thing. It meant that if you had been using that particular Gen AI, if you were using ChatGPT in the first few months that it went live, that could have been compromised. The actual
100%.
ChatGPT could have been compromised via APIs. Now, APIs are always now going to be, because of this convergence that I was talking about, of the not just convergence of pressure, but convergence of technologies. All of this is going to be interoperability. So why would you want to hack one system when you can just hack an API?
But
And
that's
then
a good.
you've got everything.
You hit a strong point there that everything is kind of all of these threats are kind of being linked together and they will start getting linked together. So how do organizations go about protecting themselves? I can hear probably people from the outside going and maybe watching this going, sounds a bit like security. You're saying spend more on it, but or it's not security, but insurance. You spend more on it when where does that money go? If I've not been attacked, is it because I've spent money on it, or is it because nobody's targeting me?
Exactly.
How do I develop some type of ROI as a business to go, that's how much I should be spending on security? What budget should I allocate to it? Because I can read, loads of reports around this and get different variations or people saying there isn't a magic number that you have to spend on to solve these problems. Me personally, I think you need to have an open view to look at technology that's out there that can give you the most protection around not what you know now, but the unknowns. I need something that stops things from coming in like as much as possible. So it blocks the unknown unknowns, as well as having all the tools or the best in class tools that help with detection and other endpoints as well, because I think you need a mixture of these things working together. What's your view around that, Roy? How would you look at that when you talk to organizations today?
I think about how, certainly from the data that if you like, the reporting, the industry reports. If you just look at the cybersecurity industry, whether it's proprietary, even for regulators, it does appear that whatever money is being spent up till now on cybersecurity, it's always been spent on a post 0 day attack. So it's all detect and respond, detect and respond, detect and respond. And let's now use AI, and we'll use that to actually mitigate. And whether we're attacking the attacker or whether we're just going to take measures immediately. Brilliant. And it should be something that's spent with AI in mind. But it does raise the question, which you've brought up, is, well, how much are we spending on this? Because inherently, this is a matter of risk. So what's the risk to us as a business? And also the risk to your partners, the risk to your clients. So it's a huge, it's not just your risk, it's a massive risk. It turns out that there's one of the latest studies I saw in the middle of last year was, whatever you're spending on cybersecurity, just
Yeah.
on detect and respond, you need to at least 5x that. At least. Whatever it is, you need to 5x it and say, this is where we are. Don't know what's going on here. Just get rid of that. This is where we're spending our money. If you're the CEO of that business and your CISO, CIO comes to you and says, yeah, you know, our budget's million. We need a 5x then. The response is, what, have we been attacked? No, but we don't know if we are going to be attacked. We're just expecting to be attacked. So this is seen as a mitigation. It's seen as, we're going to use budget just to mitigate circumstances. And that's what you see in the responses of when people do get hacked. You know, we're doing our best, and we've got procedures and policies and people in place and automation. Brilliant. They do need to be when you've been attacked. It makes sense. But it's a paradigm shift. We're talking. I mean, and we're slightly going off topic because we want to just talk about threats as it is, but the threats are not going away if people just think along the same lines that they have done so in the past 20 years. It's going to remain. You're still going to get attacked. Your departments, your security personnel expect the attack, and you're just waiting to take action. And that means that year on year, that's going to increase cost,
Yeah.
increase risk. But if there's a paradigm shift, if there are other systems within, beyond zero trust, which I'm sure we'll go into in the next few videos, if there are systems, surely they should be looked at to work and complement with the standard systems that are in place. That just makes sense, both from a just logic, budgetary constraints. Nobody's going to 5x, 10x. How can you run a business when all your money is being used to detect and
Yeah,
respond?
you've got nothing
It
coming in.
doesn't
I
make
thought you were going to be
sense.
detecting nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to come to a hard stop and say, well, we can't spend it. We just accept that we're going to get hacked, and how do we mitigate this from
Yeah.
a? But you can't mitigate against this. It could take your business out. It's definitely going to tarnish your reputation, both professionally and people involved. It could be a career ender for people involved that haven't invested. So it's just a huge self-sustaining cycle where people are spending more and more and more, and you're being told we actually do need to spend more than we're spending. Even now, we've still got to keep spending. So
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good topic for us to bring up on one of the next videos and go through and see how does a business operate. We'll put that one up on that. I
yeah,
think so. Out of this, we've had a brief chat. We've said ransomware is definitely still up there. AI is causing a problem, but equally it should solve its own
Yeah.
problem, I think is the conclusion, because people will be adopting it into more proactive solutions to help manage that. And we're going to talk about that in more detail. So we're going to talk about AI in this space, and we're also going to talk more about businesses being targeted, and so remote working, that IoT as well coming into that, and why is this happening, and how do smaller companies combat this? Because startups don't have the money to put in place to protect themselves against cybersecurity. Their focus is on growing a business and growing revenue and not spending thousands of pounds on security. It's not the first thing that comes into your head, right? When you set up a business, it's not that,
It's
it's
not
how.
practical, is it? It's not practical.
No,
And so how do business owners, and this is actually more about where the channel's going. It's not just how do you understand the technology. You actually have to step outside of what is the knowns into what you call the unknowns. And
yeah,
how do we protect the unknowns?
yeah.
And
And I
that
think
is where we can go with it. So
And I think for those that are just listening in, we do have a business that does have a product in the market. I think we need to be open about that, and we believe our product, offers a good solution into this market to complement any organization. That'll be one of the things we cover off later down the line. But the idea of this channel is really to start talking about security and cybersecurity. I think we find it an interesting topic, don't we, Rory, and how people talk about zero trust. Is it really zero trust? How do we go beyond zero trust? And what does that mean? And how does that paradigm shift? I think that'll be the next one we'll touch on. We're going to touch on zero trust, and we're probably going to talk about less than zero trust. And this is all about belt and braces and making sure no device, no user's trusted. They have to all go through security, right? But how do you manage that? How do you put something like that in place? What does it even mean? How disruptive is it? What's the friction between users trying to just access their data and do their general job and putting something with more security measures in place? Does it cause more friction? Does that turn people off? Does it hinder business? We'll chat on that on the
well,
next.
yes, I think all of the above. I think that it does put people off. It does hinder business. And you've got, yes, you can put in multi-factor authentication to gain access, but it doesn't matter if you're using MFA. That doesn't mean that you haven't somebody in a previous life has not clicked on an email, and you've got an agent sat in your network that is waiting for an opportunity. It's literally how it works, and you have no idea.
Yeah,
It's sleeping. It's a sleeper in essence, and it waits until it can be utilized and activated. And these are the methods of choice. And unfortunately, that's because we're using operating systems that allow that to happen. And a lot of this is to do with the fact that how do you combat problems that the threats are? So all of the attack vectors. I mean, we were just testing. We can bring up a diagram in a bit, but all of the attack vectors that are there, but I'll bring it up anyway in this session.
yeah,
So this is something that is borne out. This is courtesy of safehouse.com. And we basically it tells you exactly what it said on the thing. We're looking at all of the attack vectors that they're working with, and we're not going to go into that in this particular email, but all of these are being used, all of them. Man in the middle, DDoS, all of it. This is how people are gaining access to this information, your sensitive information, and this is how people are gaining access to, let's call it, any particular device, any asset. So it's all about asset management
yeah,
and data management. Actually, it's data management, and that is the way in which that we, us two, actually view this. It's about how do you protect data, because you can't protect the asset. And this goes back to the previous conversation we had minutes ago, where you're looking at the hardware. Okay, how do we protect everything? Let's get hardware in. And the hardware will protect our other assets. Yeah, but the hardware is ultimately where you're creating it's like sending out a bigger ship for the missile to hit.
Yeah.
Oh right, send a missile. It's only a small ship. It's okay. There's a bigger one coming. There's an aircraft carrier. We just fire it at that. It's much easier target to get. It's essentially what you're doing. You just target the ones that are in that field that are hardware based zero trust.
And I
And
think on that though, the more you do on that, with the more vulnerabilities that are coming out as technology advances, how much extra hardware you're gonna have to put in if you take a hardware approach? But then what do you do if that, running hardware to end the life, swapping it out, the cost of it? I think people need to look at, yeah, there's going to be new vulnerabilities coming in, but if everything could be managed as if it was on-prem and it was on your own and you've got more control, that's what we're going back to, aren't we? It's kind of going full circle that, yeah, we've got new technologies and we've got new ways of working, but the methodologies are saying, and the technology is now allowing you to go, actually, let's assume and let's see it as all in-house again. Let's see it as that, even though it's not, and put our perimeters around it. And I know there's technologies out there that do that already, right? I know there's stuff out there where people will be like, listen, we already do that, we already do this, which is great. And a lot of people aren't doing that. I think
mm,
that's a good topic for us to talk about.
and yeah, it kind of I'm kind of rolling what we talk about the current attack vectors which we've got into more of the cloud now. So we're going into that second area of what we would have planned to do in this video. But if you're looking at what's on screen, it's actually showing you what the future looks like if we just stay where we are. Because the attack surfaces are getting larger, they're multiplying. There's more BYOD,
Mhm.
people using their own machines, remote working. So there's multiplication of attack vectors within that. You've got, again, what I talked about, the compliance around this. So that's the backstop. The compliance is pushing against everything else.
So,
So
is,
you've got a lot of pressure around this, and it's not just that the cloud providers as well. There's more complexity in the cloud providers,
do
so
you
it's not as simple.
So, and just to play a bit of devil's advocate and mix it up a bit. So, the CEO of Google has just come on, hasn't he, saying he wants everybody working from the office at least 5 days a week. Was it 90 hours or whatever, or 60-hour week from the office because it makes you more productive? Is it that? And is it because they've got investment in assets that they want to utilize and make sure you're working? Or is this all undercover security play? Is this all everybody in the office, everyone going through that VPN, everyone going through one location or known locations that they've got more control over? Just to add some spice, is that am I
Hmm.
reading too much between this? Am I too much of a cynic? Is it that and not actually having people to utilize the offices and productivity? Is it reducing security and making sure people are all in one spot and working from there? So when they go home, they go home. They
I
shouldn't be
would
any devices outside of the network.
I would tend to say less so. I wouldn't necessarily agree that they can use they could use one funnel
Hmm.
if you like for people, but that's already they already can do that because they're using VPNs or they're tunneling in, and that can be critically controlled, uh, which is fine. But obviously, that's limited to the address. Either it's limited to an IP address of that machine, potentially the MAC address of that machine, and that gets put through a virtual private network. And that tunnel means that you created the environment where you don't need a big funnel of people coming to one particular office, like, or one particular destination. I think you can just control all that environment. The sophistication to be able to control all of this is there. So I don't think I wouldn't necessarily agree that you'd have to, uh, from a technology point of view, I don't think you need to control people in that way. I think this is more a corporate policy, and I think
Just
it doesn't
interesting
make
from a
sense.
company
It
that's
doesn't.
making money with cloud
Yeah,
computing, being remote,
yeah.
now everyone in an office. I'm like, okay, is there more to it than that? And you make a valid point.
Uh,
Probably technology is there to protect everything anyway.
The sophistication is there to allow you to have fully remote. However, there's intrinsic issues with that because even if you can get into the machine, that means you're in the VPN.
Mhm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah,
There's no unless there's a suspicious activity in your connection, it's going to accept that your device is allowed in to that network. So in a way, it's the same principle as if somebody's within their own network environment, and that may be contentious, I think, but comment away, where they may have a virus. Let's say they do have a virus in a laptop in your own network. It's still going to be you're looking to be detected. If you're a remote worker and you're under a VPN, multi-factor authentication, and you've got a virus, you're still in the same process. It's looking for some type of action to then trigger it, and then it can act upon it, or it sees this suspicious activity. So no, I'd say that it's I think there's enough sophistication in technology to allow for fully remote businesses to protect themselves on what I would say the first layer of protection. I mean, that's how we've set up. But the problem with that is, as we have been talking about, is that it's still open. It's still
yeah,
open. So even with best efforts, there's still holes, and you still have to keep spending. Um, and that's whether you have a people working in your own network or people working remotely. Obviously, that I think that there are more risks working remotely because there's more potential, to say, chances of being abused if you're remote. That's for sure. Whether you're doing, let's say you're working in a coffee house Wi-Fi,
yeah.
that's a possibility. So inherently, there are, in just my opinion, inherently there are more risks involved in remote working, but that can be mitigated. It just not with the same thinking that people are using. That's the problem.
Cool, cool. Okay, I think we've come to a natural close on that. And
Yeah, no, I think I think I got God, there's so many different aspects of cloud computing where you're looking at um, people do put in zero trust architecture into their cloud computing, and again, or they use secure access service edge. All of these are brilliant to have. All of them are kind of pointing towards the next generation of where security should be.
yeah,
Um, and we've got, you've got ISO behind it. You've got all of the accreditations behind it. However, there are still abuses that are possible. And I think as we go through some of the next videos, I think we'll, we'll kind of spark upon, this is, you have to think about these things differently. And what are out there, what are commercially available to SMEs, large corporates, to actively work alongside existing detect and response systems without breaking the bank, and actually are going to massively reduce your risk, and mitigate these types of threats that you've seen on screen. So
yeah. I think it's really valid, really valid. And I think as I say, we'll touch more into each subject on the next videos as we do the subsequent videos. But
yeah,
yeah, I think every or most conferences I'm going to now, even if they're generic, there's always a security or cloud security or cyber security play, where people want to know what more can they do because they're being targeted. And I think the ransomware for me still hits at number one because it seems to be the most prevalent in the market. And regardless of markets, it seems to be the biggest headache for every CEO out there. And how do we limit that down? Great stuff, mate. Great stuff. Well,
oh, brilliant.
let's get on with the next one and not leave it so long. Make sure
Yeah,
our diaries marry up a
yeah,
bit.
appreciate that.
No, that's great,
All
mate.
right,
Thank you very much.
I'll end the recording here, and please, please, everybody, happy to comment, happy to talk about this, extend upon it. It's unedited, so we make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's inherently what we do as human beings. We're going to make mistakes, but maybe make some assumptions that are too far. And that's
I'll
our
make sure we do that.
failing. Yeah. I think that we can do that together. All right. Thanks a lot, David.
Take care, mate. See you soon.
See you. Bye.